Y'all, welcome back to my channel and my podcast. Now, for those of you who were expecting them to actually bring back the Redskins name, that's not going to happen. That ship is sailed. It's done. It's not going to return. So you could just keep your pipe dream to yourselves, because even if they change the name, they're not going to bring back the Redskins. And yes, I do agree on one thing. Both names suck. The football team, the Washington football team suck. The Commanders suck. But the question is, if they're going to change the name this year, what names do you think sounds better, if any, for the Washington's team? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's get to the article. The new owners of the Washington Commanders could option for another name change, but they will not go back to using the team's previous moniker, the Redskins. That ship has sailed. Mitchell Rales, the top partner in Josh Harris' ownership group, told a crowd of nearly 700 people at a dinner hosted by David Rubinstein and Economic Club of Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. We're not going to bring back the past. We're about the future. We're about building the future and not having a divisive culture that we're engaged in. We're going to look at everything come the end of the year and think about a lot of different things and do a lot of testing and see what people think. And we'll learn. The beauty is we have the time to look at all of this stuff intelligently and make fan-based decisions. And so basically what he's trying to say is that even though they're gonna take some time to actually look at the history of the name, look at some bad decisions from Dan Snyder from football team to currently Commanders right now, but whatever this name changes, I really hope it's not worse than the Commanders. And for me, I would have preferred for them to actually name it Washington Red Wolves, because when you think about it, wolves are the most dangerous species and the most dangerous animals on earth. Like, if they named them Red Wolves, the team in the NFL is going to end up being the best in the NFC East. Rails commented, "We're the first from the new ownership group that shut down the possibility of the team restoring their own name." They echoed what team president Jason Wright said on 106.7 The Fan last week, that going back to the former name is not being considered, period. Washington retired the name in 2020 amid pressure from sponsors and local officials. It used the Washington football team as a placeholder for 18 months before unveiling its new name, the Commanders, in February 2022. Fans struggled to warm up the name. In a Washington Post poll of DC's residents published later that month, nearly half of the respondents said they had a negative view of the Commanders, with 32% disliking it and 17% saying they hated it. It's obvious to me that, the Commanders was not going to go anywhere. Same as Dan Snyder, the same issues like before, losing to winless teams, allowing the good teams to beat them, unfortunately, going from different quarterbacks to quarterbacks, different coaches to coaches, but they can't even hire a new coach from a different college football team that has a good record. I think when you think about it, the Washington Commanders have a history and bad habits of picking different coaches from different teams, rather than someone who will discipline the team, that can motivate them, that can inspire them to fight, So that right there is like, they don't even care what the fans think. It's all about them. So my thing is, if you're going to please the fans, if you're going to appeal to the fans of Washington, D.C., why not just move back to D.C. where they belong, instead of moving it to Maryland, Landover, Maryland, because that was one of the worst decisions Dan Snyder has ever made. And I wasn't even aware of the team until in early 2000s, and that's where I became a huge fan of them. But after years of being a Commanders fan, I just left that organization last year, and I made a video about it, and I don't regret it. But after a new ownership of Magic Johnson and Josh Harris, with Dan Snyder and his toxic family gone, I think the question is, can this franchise rebuild itself and restore their fan base? It could happen this Sunday in their home opening against Arizona Cardinals. That's if they do. The new ownership group opened the door to a possible name change shortly after completing its $6.05 billion purchases of the team from Daniel Snyder. NBA legend Magic Johnson, one of 20 limited partners in a group, said during an interview on NBC Today in July that everything's on the table, especially after this year. But Harris and his partners have also said repeatedly that their priorities are the season, improving the experience at FedEx Field, and trying to restore the fan base. The team invested $40 million in capital repairs and upgrades to the fan experiences at the stadium, including new food vendors and a new video board. So at least they're showing promises to the fans. But is that enough to actually get the fans engaged once again? That's if y'all are starting to win more games. Because this team has a history of not putting boards. This team has a history of not putting scores on the board. It's always like if they can't make it a fourth down, it's always field goal. Granted, that's every team. But I feel like with Washington's team, they don't know how to put the scores up on board like they used to do back in the late 80s and 90s. Like, I really want those type of days back when the team is good. The ownership group has been front and center since buying the team. Harris and Rails attend every game in the preseason and plan to be at every home game in the regular season. You're going to see a lot of me, Harris, who watched Wednesday's practice in Ashburn alongside Johnson, said. Johnson addressed players in a meeting before the workout and will be at Sunday's season opener against the Arizona Cardinals. Also expected at Sunday's game, John Riggins, the franchise legendary former running back and outspoken critic of Snyder's. His return to Wednesday's sideline unthinkable just months ago is indicative of the border change with the new regime. Almost immediately after purchasing the team, Harris reached out to Art Monk and Darryl Green, who along with other former players had front row seats to the ownership group's news conference in July. He and Harris also have roundtable lunches with 10 to 12 players at a time to get to know them, to hear ways which they can make some improvements of what this part is actually trying to say. But yeah, what Harris had to say, he's saying that him and Wells got to know every player, what they're about, what they're like and dislike about it, and what ways that they can improve in their franchise, in the field, and what's to come in the future. So that's what this part is saying. I'm not going to read this part. Wednesday, Robinson asked Harris and Wells how long they would need before deciding if Ron Rivera is the right person as head coach. Neither provide a timetable. I really enjoy getting to know Coach Rivera, Harris said. He is a good man. He's done a great job in terms of where the team is relative to where it was when he got here and relative to all of the distractions going on. He's got a very capable front office. What I've said is that we're getting up to speed, and I want to hear you think. We want to learn how you make decisions, and it's going very well. Now, in terms of where Rivera goes, I think he is the one person that it's hard for you to trust, because it's like every coach we had, every team, they lose to a good team and bad team. They always come up with excuses. You can tell they're just not happy in DC, and that's pretty much saying something. But when you think about it, I just feel like the more I look at him, even though he survived cancer, but that doesn't mean that he's a good coach either. You know, he still has a lot of baggage to do. So at the end of the day, the only thing we can do is just watch and see how it plays out in this opening season. I don't think putting tremendous pressure on someone Harris continue. Everyone who coaches an NFL team on an NBA team and us as owners, we all realize that ultimately we have to deliver wins on the field. So you don't really need to say anything. It's just out there. I mean, I kind of agree with this part though, because the only thing you can do is just do your best out there. But at the same time, you're playing your important regular season. Because if you're not strong enough to play in games, you're going to have to just sit in the sidelines and just watch for yourself. Or better yet, just don't put them on the field if they're not 100% healthy. If they don't have the type of motivation to do so, don't put them out there. Seriously. And also, I want them to actually fight. Don't go and joke around. Don't play around. Don't go on these funny interviews. I want to see this team healthy. I want to see them go out and fight like no other. Robinson also pressed the owners on the location of the team's next stadium. The team quoted elected officials throughout training camp, and Wednesday it sat before DC Mayor Muriel Bowser as she addressed the crowd at the Economic Club. So you got some governors from Virginia and Maryland. Both appear at training camp practices, and more also attended the team's preseason game against Baltimore Ravens at FedEx Field. Muriel Bowser sucks as mayor of DC. I just don't like her. I really don't. But she did say that the team needs to be brought back to DC. It shouldn't be brought in Virginia because, like I said, you cannot call yourself a Washington's team if you're in Landover, Maryland or Virginia. It has to be in that direct order, in that direct location. And that direct location is Washington, D.C. We're looking, Harris said, of a new stadium location. We're very excited to be welcomed by all three, whatever this is. And we're looking forward to engaging in the process. Sheely, as an advisor on real estate and stadium matters. We're very serious. We're going to engage quickly because we appreciate that the sooner we get started, the sooner we're going to be in the new home. And I believe that new home should be in Washington, D.C., like I said before. Because having it in Landover, Maryland, and Virginia, it's not home. Don't nobody have the money to be going way out to a new stadium where they can just build a new stadium in Washington, D.C. What is so hard about that, building a new stadium in Washington, D.C.? All right, so that was the article of the owners on not bringing back the Redskins name. And like I said, I would probably prefer for them to actually name it Red Wolves because, like I said, wolves are the most dangerous animals on earth. And I think that will fit the Washington's narrative, in my honest opinion. So, link to the article will be down below, and I'm going to catch you in my next one.